on sufficiency, demonstrating that institution like a public agency such as ADEME is embarked on sufficiency. And among our activities in ADEME on sufficiency, we are dealing with institutional aspects about definition, full poverty observatory. We have research activity, forecasting activities with the scenario on sufficiency for 2050. We implement policies on circular economy, and we monitor sufficiency. And in that respect, there are two main activities, the Odyssey Mur project that you mentioned in the introduction, and we are implementing different barometers and observatories which aim to understand the values and the behavioral change of the French population. And among these barometers, I will explain you how we can detect some weak signal on the acceptance of sufficiency through these barometers. For those which are not familiar with this new concept of sufficiency, to be very rapid is to go beyond the classic energy efficiency, is to reduce consumption, but in changing your standard of living or your behavior. It could be in a good sense, or it could be more restricted. You can have a smooth sufficiency, you can have hard sufficiency, you can suffer sufficiency. It's what is mentioned here. We have different dimensions of sufficiency. And the last point is when we are dealing with energy sufficiency, we observe that it's not sufficient. We should have a broader views on resource and consumption sufficiency. So if we accept that we understand sufficiency, which is not obvious because it's really a new concept and we need more research and more implementation to really feel what is it. This is a list of our barometers which encompass somehow some dimension on sufficiency issues. I will present roughly all these barometers, and I select one typical result. Of course, there are more than 2,000 results from all these barometers, and it's too short to present everything. So it's just to give you a flavor that we take seriously sufficiency, and we have tools to monitor the acceptance of such concept. When you look to this list of barometers, you have different kind of barometers. You have a barometer we try to understand what the French think about climate change, about energy efficiency, etc. These are the two ones. The second one is to understand the acceptance of new technologies like heat pump, like hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles. So of course, it's important to understand also this aspect. We have a more, let's say, long-term views on what are the utopias, perspectives of the French. And since sufficiency will be a long-term issue now that will affect our future, this is very interesting to see what the future French believe they can accept. And we have two more sectoral barometers, one on transportation and one on urbanism. And we plan to implement a new barometer fully dedicated to sufficiency in 2021. This is the cover page of all the reports. This is important that this barometer, since we are a public agency, are displayed around the audience. So it's not only for ADEME staff only, it's for all the public audience. And we make a lot of effort to report on these barometers and to make it available, for instance, in the website of ADEME. Unfortunately, for the moment, all these barometer reports are in French. When we look to the methodologies, we start to have these barometers for those which are the oldest from 2000 every year. And this is a table which summarizes roughly the methodologies that we use for these barometers. There are mainly now online surveys. Only one we paid the surveyors and the surveyed. This is on transportation. Generally, the duration of survey is 1 week. For transportation, it's 6 weeks. And you can see the different date. Generally, they are yearly, so it's barometers. That's why we call it barometer. It's not exactly a panel. It's more a barometer. And you can see that some are very old, with more than 20 years of follow-up. And some are more recent, for example, those on Utopia. The sampling size more or less corresponds to be representative of the French population through classic methodology of quotas on age, gender, etc. There are many questions, and in some cases, there are open questions. So this is classic methodology. There is not something revolutionary on that. What you have to understand is we make the effort to understand the trend in the acceptance of policies through these barometers. If I take the first one, the oldest one, social representation of climate change, it's a classic. What do you believe in climate change? Do you think it's important, etc.? And there is one question. So the objective is to observe how the French, what are the representation and the cause and consequence of climate change, and what is the opinion on French on that. Among the question, this is all the results I show will be in 2020. Question 21, which measure can we adopt to limit GHG emissions? And you can see that some of the answers or questions relate indirectly to sufficiency. For example, to reduce food waste, to have obligation to renovate homes, to have tax on airplane, to have obligation on cafeteria and propose vegetarian. And you can see already, if you add what is green, which means more or less to be acceptable, it's the level of acceptance. It's very, very high. It's more than 2/3 of the French are ready to have, for example, obligation in canteen to have vegetarian meals. In this second graph, it's even more dedicated to sufficiency, and I put in red what I consider is part of the understanding of sufficiency. For example, to buy local food, to decrease indoor temperature of 3 degrees. This is not efficiency, this is sufficiency, because your comfort, your standard of life, it's different than just to limit your temperature to 19 degrees. To consume less. So you see, there are 80% of the French, we believe that we should consume less. And there are also 75% of French which consider not that to use airplane for leisure, it's not anymore important. So you see that a huge degree of acceptance for sufficiency, and frankly speaking, as a French, and even I work at ADEME, I am very surprised by this positive opinion. The second barometers, it's more dedicated to some specific point on air pollution, renewable and efficiency. And this is the same idea. So it's complete the same, the previous barometers. And again, I select some measures, the level of acceptance, which is a little bit lower. For some, let's say, action, daily action that we are ready to make for reducing our consumption for sufficiency. For example, reducing sanitary hot water, to have less baths and more shower, or even less shower per week. To adapt to use our digital, because it changes your behavior. or to close your ventilation. So you see the level of acceptance of this, let's say, quite hard sufficiency measures are very high. To complete that, this is behavioral. It should be translated in terms of technology acceptance. And this is the idea of these barometers. And the idea is to understand or to explore what are the attitude of the French toward the adoption of innovative technologies. Personally, I am not ready to use an electric car. Even I can vote green. So you see, it's not so obvious to have adoption of new technologies. And you have here the list of technologies that we are monitoring. So of course, for them, there is no problem. Electric meters. Just yesterday, I refused to put electric smart meters in my home, etc. And there is also something on wood boilers, etc. So you see this type of technologies we are monitoring, and there are many results, of course, on the acceptance. And I just give you an example for cars. Would you yourself be willing to use hydrogen of electric vehicles? And you see that the level is quite low, so we are more ready to change our behavior, and in one way, not so positive to accept some new technologies. What is interesting, I give that example to show that the acceptance for electric vehicle or hydrogen vehicle is more or less the same. Personally, I will not be ready to use hydrogen vehicle, but this is for the long future, not before 2040. So you see the importance to monitor the acceptance of technologies, because the engineers are all our dreamers, believing that we will accept their technologies. I will not put an heat pump at home because it's too noisy. So the fourth barometer, it's more, let's say, a long-term perspective and more, let's say, to see what kind of society we're able to accept. And we suggest three types of utopia. One, ecological, which more or less corresponds to an economy where we have a balanced economy, and we are adopting sufficiency. And it's the idea, to summarize this scenario, is to say we will go with less but better. Second utopia, it's a conservative utopia. And the last one, it's what we are doing right now, considering that individual rights are very important and individual values are important. And when we test the acceptance of this scenario, I am very surprised that 60% of the French are able to adapt the ecological utopia, which is by far very well evaluated. And if you look also the detractor of that type of utopia, it's only 4%. Second result we see from that barometers, it's the COVID pandemic has not affected in the aspiration of French for the future. It's remarkable stable in terms of result compared to the previous waves, even if we have to go in details by type of, let's say, population. And in fact, there are silent mutations which are behind all this acceptance. But you see, this future, ecological future, is something that in the paper, I say, is acceptable by the French. Number 5, this is more concrete about consumption. So it's not energy sufficiency or climate sufficiency, it's, let's say, consumption sufficiency. And the objective of this barometer is to have an in-depth analysis of the way European and many French are able to sustain their daily life, and what kind of patterns they are doing, for example, for waste management, etc. And there are many, many results, and I take some of the results. 88% consider that the enterprise encourage overconsumption. So there is a responsibility towards the enterprise, and we believe as a citizen that it's not only our fault, it's also the fault of the companies. And you can imagine rapidly what kind of implication in terms of policy implementation an agency like us can propose. For example, to have some obligation to reduce weight at the production level. And again, this second result, which more or less comforts the previous result, that 86% of the French accept a society where the consumption takes up less space, for instance, by seasonal product. And you have here some result, more detailed result. So you see that, again, in principle, the French are ready to adopt a very ecological or even sufficiency behavior. More, again, going to more concrete result on transportation. So we evaluate all the new mobilities. You can see here all the new modes that you can see now on the street. I don't know the name in English, this electric mode. And we would like to see if this new emerging mobility will be accepted and which share of these modes. And you have here some user satisfaction. So among the mark of 10, for example, car sharing, it's around 8. Carpooling, car sharing, and this type of mode, it's half of the have a lower node. So you see this user satisfaction, it's quite high again for cars, but what is important is they are ready to share. There are many other results, but I have no time to do that. And the last one, it's on emerging cities. It's again on the future. What kind of cities we would like to, where do we like to live in the future? And we have different objectives. It's to measure and map the emerging issues. What is important for us in the future in the cities, what we would like to have, and how digitalization impact our urban lifestyle. So many conditions about the attractiveness and how we are engaged to build our cities. And the questionnaire has several, let's say, dimensions. For example, what is the attitude towards cities? What kind of cities we would like to have? What kind of mobilities, etc. So this is a very new barometers. It's the second wave. And it's very important to understand how it shapes our future, notably if we want to make some storytelling about future of zero carbon cities. And here you have some result. We discuss different type of cities, cities with nature, more collaborative or diffused, connected cities, auto-sufficiency cities, and you can see that more or less among the models of cities we would like to have, the citizen prefer to have what we call a nature rather than smart cities and diffuse cities. It's very, for me, interesting because in all programs, in all conferences, we have a lot of presentation of smart cities. Don't forget that the people don't want smart cities. It's a dream of engineers and technologists. But if you look for people, if they want to be connected or if they want to have a smart nature cities, by far they prefer a nature ville compared to connected. Smart cities, it's 5. Nature ville is 7,000. So what we can say from all these barometers, so barometers is part of our holistic approach to understand the sufficiency that we will certainly have to adopt in the future. We will not reach CO2 target without adopting sufficiency measures. And these barometers certainly participate to the understanding of the acceptance of the sufficiency policies because certainly they will change our day-to-day life. And as I I have no time to show you, but we were able to detect some particular event with these barometers. This is why we make daily, yearly barometers, is to detect, for example, when we have introduced the CO2 tax, and then we get the yellow jacket. What is the impact of COVID pandemia on the acceptance on climate, etc. So we were able to, with these barometers, really to see some changes, few percentage changes on the barometers. What is the target audience of these barometers? What is the use of these barometers? Of course, it's important for the technical and research experts of ADEME. For those which are working on electric vehicles, they understand why the acceptance is still low in France, and they have to work on that. It's important for communicators who have to set up advertising campaign to make this self-sufficiency more acceptable, etc. It's important for forecasters because we are making vision at ADEME on 2050 and a particular scenario on sufficiency. And we have to see if our hypotheses to reach our target are accepted by the French. We have to run this barometer, a team of sociologists. We have 2 full-time staff dedicated to run these barometers. And there are other barometers at ADEME or surveys. For example, a survey on energy efficiency works. What type of work are we doing? Do we prefer to make isolation on roof, with changing our windows, etc.? Sufficiency covers different dimensions. We cannot, now we cannot work on energy efficiency alone. We have to combine that with air pollution, with climate, etc. This will be the same for sufficiency. Sufficiency will cover. We have to work in the same time on resource sufficiency, consumption sufficiency, energy sufficiency, and our barometer should be able to follow in the same time all these dimensions of sufficiency. To be among all the bulk of result, and I encourage you to go to the ADEME website to see the detailed result. For me, what is impressive, it's the huge level of, in principle, I put that in a bulk, of acceptance of this sufficiency policy, and I am really surprised that 60% or 70% of French are ready to embark on sufficiency. And but it's clear, I have no time to say, but we make the same survey with politicians, and the rate of acceptance is lower, and it's a general trend. The French citizens are more, let's say, voluntary than the politicians. But there is still a gap between the principle and the action. And as we can see in other surveys, there are only 10% of French who make energy efficiency work every year. So one concrete application of these barometers, for instance, is to, after the yellow jacket, let's say, event, and based on these barometers, we have a new type of consultation to introduce CO2 tax at local level. So this is how we can use barometers for our daily life in an institution like the Energy Agency ADEME. Thank you for attention, and I hope that you will be interested to implement such kind of barometers or to participate to this approach. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Didier. That's a very interesting presentation. Definitely changing people's values, attitudes are very important part of this global change for sustainable development, for climate change mitigation. I have one quick question. Such barometers are very useful for introducing policies because often government politicians are saying the public won't accept it. It seems sometimes maybe the public are more willing to than they are perceived. Are such barometers also applied at EU level in other countries?
So if you look in my methodology, there are some barometers which are which are at European level. Some other, you will see in detail. So I don't know what is the experience in other countries. I know there are other barometers, not only in France, of course, in every country. For example, in UK, they are very good in barometers in transportation. But some of these barometers I mentioned are the European dimension. I think two of them have the European dimension. They are not purely French.
Thank you very much. Yeah, our next speaker is Arlinda Bresa. You can already upload your presentation while I introduce you. Arlinda is a PhD student at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture at the University of Zagreb, Croatia. Additionally, she's a teaching assistant in the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Pristina, Kosovo. Her field of research is related to advanced user-centered control systems in buildings with an emphasis on the user behavior and the use of preference on the indoor comfort conditions. Arlinda, the floor is yours.
Yes, so hello everyone. My presentation today will be regarding behavioral insights from the user-oriented control systems in buildings. As said, my research is focused on advanced building control systems. And as we know, advanced building control systems have been usually technology-oriented, where the automation scale has gained a recent momentum, but now with the increasing importance on the user-oriented control systems in order to increase the user satisfaction, the user-oriented control systems has gained more focus. The reason is in order to increase user satisfaction and in order to enable the integration of the human dimension or the occupants in the decision-making process of the control system. Such integration is enabled with the human-in-the-loop feature, where the occupants can report their feedback to the system, and that can be then considered in the algorithm in order to adjust the indoor climate conditions. This then enables a kind of shared autonomy with the automated control system and the users or the occupants as well. When employing a human-in-the-loop feature with the control systems, we establish a user-building interaction where the user interacts with the building systems, such as the HVAC or heating and ventilation, air conditioning systems, the window operation, the lighting and shading. While interacting with such systems, they also have to report their perceived comfort as thermal comfort, visual, indoor air quality, or acoustic comfort. There has some research in the user-oriented control systems in buildings where they employed different kind of control systems, such as PID control systems, BMS, heuristic rules, and another control system is the model predictive control, which I am focused on, or my study is focused on, which is an advanced kind of building control system that enables, with the help of prediction, weather prediction, thermal load prediction, or inside loads, it enables to predict the desired indoor conditions by optimizing them using an optimization algorithm. This advanced control system, so the model predictive control, enables also the integration of the feedback from the users on their indoor comfort preferences. But the thing that we noticed when researching the literature on the user-oriented control systems and behavior, we saw that the participation of occupants to give feedback or to report their comfort preference is usually just assumed. But the question is, will people actually report their preference on the indoor conditions, since in order to develop the personalized profiles based on the preference of each occupant, we have to collect a set or a big amount of data points. And this kind of behavior, the reporting, their feedback, represents a kind of behavior in itself. So the question is, how can we analyze the kind of behavior of the occupants or the users, the user-oriented control system? We can do that using interdisciplinary research approach by using social sciences and technical sciences as well. Coming from a background of mechanical engineering, we are collaborating with psychologists in order to establish a good research on the behavior or what drives people to give their feedback on user-oriented control systems. And some of the psychological theories that we have encountered in research. There are numerous psychological theories used, but the one that we are focused on are the theory of planned behavior, the technology acceptance model, and the driver's needs, actions, and system frameworks. The first one that we are doing our research now is the theory of planned behavior, which employs three main constructs, which is the attitudes, the subjective norms, and the perceived behavioral control, which enable us to determine the behavioral intention. And then by observing the actual behavior of the occupants, we can predict their behavior on the report giving or their feedback process. So what we have seen from the literature so far is that most of the papers that use theory of planned behavior in the energy related field are solely just focused on energy savings or energy efficient measures, whereas we have not yet encountered such application on the user-oriented control systems, since such systems have not yet been widely deployed in real buildings, and the lack of long-term evidence of such use has also impacted the lack of research on behavior in that part. Here we can see from the literature that I have reviewed, which has the main emphasis on the model predictive control type of building control system, and also their interaction with the behavior of occupants. We can see that the research in regards to control systems, the most recent research is focused on the behavior and the interaction of the occupants with the buildings, just window opening or their thermal preference. And so you can see based on the color, the years which these researches were conducted. This was done using a algorithm. And the conclusion of my literature review research is that the largest part of the research that I have reviewed is that they assume that there will be provided feedback from the users in order to collect needed data to be included in the algorithm of the control system. There is a lack of implemented user-centered control system in buildings, which also leads to a lack of long-term evidence on the user behavior or their feedback provision. And also there is a lack of interdisciplinary research, since most of the papers focus only on how they develop the user-oriented control systems and less on the occupant side or the human side of the research. So, thank you. I think I went too fast, but that was my presentation.
Yes, thanks a lot for the presentation. We all experience this kind of have control of the building or lack of control of the building. Often in some cases, it's especially overcooling in some, conference centers in tropical countries. So this kind of user feedback, how that can be, integrated in the operation of the buildings, or that's really an important question. Have you, I can see in the end, you are seeing this is a lack of application in real practices. Have you think about how to promote that or address these barriers?
Yes, actually, as part of my research is to implement a user-centered control system in a school building in Croatia. We are still developing that, but I think in the future we will also deploy that since now we are analyzing the pre-part or the before part, the integration, and then we have the algorithm that we input the user preference into that algorithm for the said model predictive controller, which controls the overall building with all building systems in that. And then it will be deployed and we will test it for a longer period of time.
Thank you very much, Arlinda. Yeah, our next speaker will be is Dr. Kyriakos Papazoglou. Dr. Papazoglou, you can upload your presentation while I introduce you. Dr. Papazoglou is a senior program officer at ProSafe, the Product Safe Forum for Europe. Before joining ProSafe, he had led business development and strategy teams in the tertiary education sector in the UK and Turkey, where he also taught economics, business, and research methods. He has acted as a project manager and expert on a number of commercial and European Commission, European Union funded projects. He holds a PhD in international economics, relations, and business development, and a master's degree in international relations. Dr. Papazoglou, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. The title of our presentation, Recovering Lost Energy, and what's the role and the impact of EU market surveillance on energy efficiency. My ambition today is to introduce you into the EEPLIANT market surveillance world and the challenges and the opportunities that we experience in our market surveillance journey, let's call it as such, and the market surveillance work. Let's set first the scene. I'm sure you've heard this statement or a similar one a lot during this conference. So nothing more than what is written. Transition to a lower net zero carbon economy is a pressing strategic challenge and a multidimensional problem. In European Union, eco-design and energy labeling account for over 40% of the 20% energy efficiency target for 2020 and 23% of the 2020 greenhouse gas emission reduction target. A range of possible employable levers exists. Many of them were discussed during the conference. These include technological innovation, regulation, investment, financial incentives, structural change, community-based frameworks, education, and of course, change of behaviors. Let's establish the level of relevance of the EEPLIANT program. We talk about a threefold EU-wide market surveillance program. So 3 individual joint market surveillance actions, the EEPLIANT 1, the EEPLIANT 2, and the running EEPLIANT 3 concerted action. What's their scope? The scope is common for all 3. These are large-scale transboundary market surveillance joint campaigns on eco-design and energy labeling performed by market surveillance authorities in European member states for targeted and prioritized product sectors. And the focus is primarily on domestic appliances. What's the goal? The bottom line is that our objective is to detect greenwashing and free-riding non-compliant products that are placed on the EU market and enforce compliance. The end result is to recover part of the lost energy. To this end, we have developed a methodology. So we achieve our goal by conducting product inspections on technical and labeling requirements, and also carrying out compliance laboratory testing in order to control the energy performance and compliance of products to the applicable union legislation. This slide depicts the landscape in which market surveillance operates, and this, of course, includes the work of the EEPLIANT program. To clarify, this is a low-resolution oversimplification of the reality, just an attempt to demonstrate the environment in which the market surveillance functions, and the environment in which market surveillance authorities try to navigate through. Perhaps it's already obvious that the fundamental problem here is emerging complexity. And this is not only because of the challenges posed by the emerging e-commerce the trends and the impact that these trends have on product traceability. With these bullet points, we would like to indicate the touch points where market surveillance authorities try to target control. So we have a distinction between a proactive or reactive market surveillance, and this includes, as we will discuss later, product screening, sampling, visual checks, so inspection of documents, marking, labels, and of course physical testing. The yellow bullet represents import compliance controls, primarily conducted by customs authorities, but in some cases in cooperation with market surveillance authorities in certain on certain occasions. If we want to deconstruct, to explain the complexity, perhaps we can do so by focusing on one of the sources of the problem. So let's think of the manufacturer, the producer of an energy project. So let's think of a manufacturer with a value proposition in the energy efficiency market. How many typologies exist and how these affect the product compliance rates and energy efficiency? Well, there are many ways to address this, but a main distinction might be between a product-oriented and service-oriented business models among manufacturers. And this distinction and the way the choice with regards to their business model defines also the relationship with the end user. So in a manufacturer that relies on a product oriented business model seeks to maximize sales and minimize costs. On the other hand, a service oriented manufacturer will try to maximize value for the end user and the society, and this might well include energy saving and also the provision of other ecological benefits. Then, companies are constructions of sub-units. So a company is a multi-layer organization with often conflicting motivation systems. For instance, let's take the case of a heat pump producer. Sales and marketing will focus on maximizing profits and market share. On the other hand, the legal and quality control will focus on regulatory compliance. Then, across the board, there is a realm of factors that structure individual and social perceptions and in turn determine human behaviors in relation to energy efficiency. Social demographic variables. So this includes age, gender, class, social identity, level of income, level of education, political ideology, cultural norms, value structures, attitudes, knowledge, incentives, goals, situational forces, and other contextual factors. The self-efficacy perceptions of individuals, and also aesthetic concerns. But what we would like to highlight among these factors is also what regards the sense and the notion of responsibility in relation to environment and climate change, and how this notion is perceived and ascribed by all the actors across the supply chain. Well, we can exemplify further, but perhaps it's outside the scope of this presentation. What I can say more is also there are spatial and temporal dimensions and constraints that relate to compliance check interventions. So complexity is high. Let's describe the problem. And let's do that by using evidence and data findings from the EEPLIANT family of projects. So overall, inspection and testing results from the EEPLIANT program exhibit serious high levels of non-compliance. In EEPLIANT 2, a project that ran between 2017 and 2020, the average test failure rate for the 3 targeted product sectors, these were household and professional refrigerating appliances and network connected devices. So the average test failure rate for these 3 product types was almost 40%. So 40% of the tested products had excess energy consumption. I must highlight here that the results are not representative of the market. The reason for that is that MSA target by default high-risk products. So the fact that the participating MSAs managed to detect such a relatively high non-compliance rate means more that they do well their job in detecting efficiently and effectively non-efficient products. Now, in terms of the energy impact, the primary energy loss saved as a result of the EEPLIANT 2 activities on refrigeration and alone, so only in the 2 activities that I referred to before, has been estimated. We used an a bespoke impacts calculation model to do that. So it is estimated to average 80 gigawatt-hour savings per year for the period between 2020 and 2030. This estimate assumes that the overall rate of compliance in the domestic and professional refrigeration sectors alone improves only by a very conservative 1% because of the work performed by EEPLIANT 2. This translates into millions of euros in reduced energy costs for the consumer and the number of knock-on and spillover effects. Effects on the economy, on health, on ecosystems. Next, a comparison of the results between EEPLIANT 2 and the predecessor Athlete 1 project on domestic refrigeration shows that overall, the levels of non-compliance do not seem to improve over time. So, non-compliance has been found to be a consistent and persistent problem, or if you wish, challenge. To simplify, energy efficiency produces gains. Non-compliances are anomalies that generate losses. So, economics suggests that consciousness and rational behavior. going back to the source, or to one of the main sources of the problem, the producer side. If we are to assume rationality in manufacturing and marketing processes, so if we are to assume the pursuit of best interest by these players, why do non-compliance exist? And then, is non-compliance a behavioral problem? The right answer is it depends. It depends on the type of the non-compliance, and it depends on the context. Few examples of non-compliance detected across the three pliant market surveillance actions. Packaging, marking, labeling information contained mistakes or missing data. Here we are referring to mandatory information required by legislation. Technical documentation contained mistakes, or technical documents were missing and never provided even after repeated attempts by market surveillance authorities to retrieve them from the manufacturers. There is an observed mismatch between the measurement results and declared nominal values and the energy label class. We already referred to high excess power consumption and low tap water efficiency. This is relevant to the campaign under EEPLIANT 1 on gas boilers. The key is to understand what is the root cause of a non-compliance. And because of what we have already described, the landscape, the players involved, and the level of complexity, this is far from being a simple exercise. Based on our experience and the findings in our projects, we were able to create typologies of non-compliance. Categories of duets relating to non-compliance. We have a division between old and new emerging issues, non-compliances. So what is this about? Technological advancement and connected devices brought up new forms of non-compliance. For instance, the problem of circumvention. What is circumvention is the use of a defeat device or a software in a project that is able to detect when this project gets tested, and because of that, being able to adjust its settings and change its performance in order to improve the results of the testing. One very famous example of of a circumvention issue is the Dieselgate, or the diesel dupe, in 2015. In relation to a car manufacturer that use that kind of workarounds in order to pass better the physical testing. So all the new problems, when we have a new problem, when a new problem emerges, this naturally produces the need for assimilation and diversified response. So this means that we need to update our conserved knowledge. What we already know, we need to upgrade. We need to add extra knowledge on the knowledge structure that we have preserved so far. Essentially, when we encounter something new, we process, we make sense of it by relating into things that we already know. The problem is that this requires significantly greater effort. Then, distinction between formal and material non-compliances. A formal non-compliance is, for example, a manufacturer sending technical documentation late. A material non-compliance is a product under testing not being able to achieve the claimed class or eco-design limit set by the standard. Then we have trivial and serious non-compliances. We have conscious and situational non-compliances. There are numerous combinations, but not all non-compliances are of equal value. Sometimes we observe that importance is self-manifested. But there are cases in which the market surveillance authorities need to infer, to perceive the value of the importance value in order to decide on enforcement. So this part of the equation, of the decision equation, relies on the judgment of individuals and is context dependent. I would like to give you an example, a real-life example from Denmark. A few years ago, during in the context of a national market surveillance campaign, the Danish Market Surveillance Authority discovered that the order of information in the product fiche of a sampled domestic appliance was not correct according to the requirements. So information was there, but the order was wrong. So after assessing the relevant importance, the authority decided not to proceed with enforcement. Few months later, the Danish authority who performed this inspection was approached by an angry white goods manufacturer. It was the same manufacturer whose product fiche was previously found non-compliant by the Danish authority. However, the Danish authority back then decided not to enforce. What the manufacturer communicated to the authority was, in a profound frustration, was that it got fined because of this very non-compliance issue, fined by a different market surveillance authority. So we have the same fact, the same issue, but a different interpretation of the seriousness and the importance of the issue. So there are infinite patterns of such anomalies too many, too different. Evidence from the EEPLIANT 2 project with respect to revealed high non-compliance rates naturally have raised a question. Should market surveillance keep doing what it does, or should do something different and perhaps better? Let's go back to the landscape and let's identify the three main actors and their relationship to the problem. We leave policymakers aside from this analysis. So we have the producers, sellers, the marketplaces that produce and trade non-compliant products, consciously or unconsciously. We have market surveillance authorities and customs that they are not able or do not have the resources to detect all non-compliant products traded in the market. And then we have the end user, the consumer who buys non-compliant and energy inefficient products. What are the pain points towards energy efficiency with regards to each of these actors? First of all, the notion of 100% non-compliance rate is unrealistic. So the problem of problems will never go away. If I may to use a metaphor, this is analogous to a disease, a virus. Not very clever to use such a metaphor in COVID times, but allow me to do that. So you cure one variant, but then a mutation emerges. In a macro level analysis, there are multiple problem factors responsible for this. We referred a few times to complexity. Complexity creates confusions, increases costs, and makes people reluctant to engage. As regards the producer, the overregulation, the complexity, and the number of requirements to be met is a barrier. It opens loopholes and allows misinterpretations and exploitation of workarounds because of the loopholes in the legislation. There are practical barriers for them. The scattered production line that can result in some poor quality controls, for instance. Regulatory compliance is resource intensive and costly, especially for small economic operators. There is a claimed lack of knowledge. I say claim because sometimes there is a gap between statements and behaviors. There is a lack of interest, low sense of responsibility, accountability, and tokenism. And there is...
Sorry, Kyriakos, how many slides do you have? Remaining slides?
Few more, but I will speed up.
Okay, because it's now already 10:14. We need to leave a little time for the final speaker.
Sure.
So please try to wrap up in 2
All
minutes.
Right. We'll do so. We'll do so. So okay, let's move to barriers relating to the market surveillance authorities. Again, the overregulation, the legal fragmentation. The national legislation is a formidable source of diversity across EU member states. The vast number of products compared to the limited human, financial, technical resources and capacities. And of course, the variation in the levels of knowledge and experience among the inspectors. For the end user, information overload does not help. Combined with limited cognitive resources, low awareness or even ignorance of energy labels, low confidence and low trust in energy labels, and the question of costs, principle of loss aversion and uncertain payoff for reduced energy consumption in case of the purchase of an energy efficient product, and of course individual and social value based perceptions. To map the process quickly, we can run through. What I can say is human behavior lies at the core of the entire market surveillance process. So first, inspectors need to prioritize, decide what cluster of products to target. Then they are grouped according to overlapping shared interests and priorities. They conduct research to narrow the scope. They select the product, the specific product type. Then they map the economic operators in their countries. They screen, they sample the products. Stage one is the inspection of technical and label requirements. These include online checks and checks on documentation. In case of non-compliance, nudging and formally informing manufacturers with a request to rectify. If not, enforcement. This is country-specific because of specific national legislative frameworks. Stage two, the results from stage one feed into stage two, testing a segment of the screened product in a lab. Again, in case of non-compliance, inform. If no action is taken, enforce. The classic eco-design and energy labeling market surveillance approach sees a non-compliant product as a static unidimensional transmitter of anomalies across the supply chain. The next generation market surveillance needs to understand the behaviors that produce these anomalies. This journey has helped us, meaning the EEPLIANT participants, and in particularly the EEPLIANT 3 participants, to rethink our strategies, redefine the problem, and think a number of possible and feasible ways to address it. We have come to realize that whenever the effectiveness of a policy depends on human behavior, behavioral insights are relevant. At the same time, not all problems require a behavioral approach. Sometimes you just need decisive action. For example, new regulations, revision of regulations. What works in changing energy-relating behaviors? There is not one single motivating structural or other factor that drives sustainable energy behaviors. There is a myriad of potential influences on producer and consumer behavior in relation to sustainability, and a range of technical and behavioral measures and behavioral change interventions with the potential to improve energy efficiency and save energy. In EEPLIANT 3, we test some solutions. Still, there are boundaries in the extent of our intervention. For example, one key enabler to bridge the gap with reality in EEPLIANT 3 is automation, digitalization. We develop technology-supported IT tools, for instance, web crawlers that can boost convergence in product inspections while alleviating cost and time constraints. Then we reinforce the existing data-informed energy and non-energy impact model developed under EEPLIANT 2. This is a forecaster that may enable policy design and policy innovation. Next to this, other facilitators of change in EEPLIANT 3 are standardization of screening procedures, synergizing with the industry to inform and educate before hardcore enforcement, supporting and guiding good compliance behavior, working with consumer associations to increase public awareness and trust on energy labels, implementing peer-to-peer digital communication systems to ease the flow of information without other mediation, rolling out easy information communication campaigns sealed by the production of a final layman's report on findings and impacts and benefits that have been generated by the project. And also we have the ambition to contribute alongside the energy labeling and eco-design ATCO groups in the modeling of non-compliance by risk classes. It is work in progress, so I would like to invite you to stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Papazoglou. It's a very interesting and important topic. Unfortunately, for now, we run out of time, so we will immediately move on to the next presentation. I hope you can share the slides and people can follow up with you, the discussion with you. Our next speaker is Andrea Romaoli Garcia. Andrea Romaoli, you can already upload your presentation while I introduce you. Romaoli is an international humanitarian lawyer and a professor for master's degree course holding UN positions as project manager, topic driver, consultant, UN mentor, and leader by Global Compact at WEPs across different areas: governance, court, technologies, child protection, human trafficking, agriculture, communication, education, as far as in the United States, Malta, Asia, Brazil, and Africa. She has a very interesting experience, broad experience. Romaoli, the floor is yours. I hope all the participants can stay. This session can need to maybe 10 extra minutes to finish, to give Romaoli enough time to finish her presentation. Thank you.
My name is Andrea, and this presentation is a glance on hospital waste management, since many countries don't follow the protocols. Among the reasons, the lack of access to technologies for data management results in the lack of transparency, accountability, and inefficiency. Also, it shows the importance on definition of the sixth dimension of human rights at Anthropocene age as the governance foundations of technologies, since humans have become a major driver of global environmental change. Also, it requires to ensure the quality of algorithms at filling the purposes for the good. The reconciliation between humanity and climate are urgent issues that require financial technologies and the human resources. However, the focus on sustainability will ensure the human evolution for affordable health future generation. The climate changes and global growing warming are impacting on microbial organisms as drug-resistant bacteria, and available studies indicate the carbon sequestration means emergence call to prevent the growing drug-resistant bacteria, such as a global emergency, particularly after the COVID pandemic. A proper approach onto digital technologies should cover human and climate strategies as the biomedical waste management, such a topic to prevent another pandemic, and the usage of digital technologies as the response for global health emergency. The large number of deaths and hospital waste generated by COVID can become a catastrophe in terms of planning and management of tales from the pandemic. The way as humans, animals, and environment interact does impact on drug-resistant bacteria. This condition worsens by greenhouse effect since warm temperatures benefits the proliferation. Obviously, it means the risk to global health since environmental conditions are places for bacterial resistance. Some sectors closer than others and have more knowledge about the concerns and solutions that require the environmental social contract for behavior change on issues such as the technical used on preparation of soil, livestock, principal crop management, and consumerist protocols for meat. Also, it needs a glance to beyond of hospital doors. A concern on waste medical could not install inside hospital routine alone. Okay, let's go. Obviously, it means the risk to global health since environmental conditions are places for bacterial resistance. Some sector is closer than others and have more knowledge about the concern and solutions require the environmental social contract for behavior changer on issues such as the technical use and preparation of soil, livestock, principal crop management practices, and consumerist protocols for meat. Also, a needs of the glance beyond of hospital's door. Human meals are part of this view, and safe water will not fast get back in case of the grave accident. Reasons why it requires preventive measures. It suggests an effort on global surveillance to protect all civilizations due to developed countries has intense industrial, agricultural, and livestock flow and growing poverty that increases the risk environment since the soil is closer or shared with antimicrobial and medical waste. The growing poverty from pandemic is the alert to speed up the efficient on energy by the usage of technologies to best management of waste, also to generate new jobs by sustainable society. We are in the slide 4. Okay, thank you. We are in the crucial moment when the human survival requires a reconciliation with our planet. On the other hand, the mindset on no one will be left behind implies to global security and faces challenges such as harmful incineration process, hard implementation costs faced by developing countries that compromise in the green solutions on efficiency, medical waste management. The corruption on public procurement procedures in countries where democracy and judicial institutions are weak. Also, it means significant obstacle that impacts on costs to deploy technological solutions with capacity to protect the water, soil, and reach the net zero. Next slide, please. Some concerns, slide 5, please. Some concerns justify this presentation because each country acts from different perspectives. The lack of proper management of healthcare waste that allows chemical waste radioactive infections being uncontrolled dumped without following protocols. Increased waste, plastics dropped in the environmental and toxic gases released by incineration used in waste medical reservoir. Obviously, the solutions matters to stronger judicial institutions, inclusion by expanding the access on available best technologies. Also, this presentation suggests a governance guide to ensure that technologies will be applied for good and sovereignty of life's value. And next slide, please, slide 6. Across the world has example about the dangers of inefficient medical waste management. This is an example about Brazil, where the medical waste was dumped in sites in place near to the ocean. Very dangerous. Next slide, please, 7. About the prevention of global warming, the intersection of circular economy, the usage of technological planning tools and strategies will accelerate jobs and health planning. Why circular economy is the choice on replacing the linear? Haggard on linear, the resources are extracted to produce goods, which are distributed to markets, consumed, and thrown away at the end of their useful life. This system was appropriated in a world of less than 1 billion inhabitants, where resources were abundant and the waste wasn't a particular problem. But it's not suitable in a world where the population is 7.7 billion and predicted to become 9.7 billion in 2050. Circular economy means the window of opportunity for the reconciliations between humans and planet. In one hand, the linear economy still dominates global production and consumption. But on the other hand, the global scenario are friendly to recover the economy from new approaches, since sustainability is the safe strategy for all sectors, with scope adds the reuse and products and recapturing value. There are some cities and business see billions of dollars lurking in a circular approach. The regulatory environment is dynamic, especially as it concerns waste management. It's crucial change in mindset and behavior to help governments optimize the management of their waste streams and how the world handles waste. Also acting over generations by building a foundation of laws, sustainable raw material suppliers, develop operation process to eliminate wasting during manufacturing and distribution, adding the solutions at scaling up to allow reuse or repurposing of materials so far as it generates values. To capitalize opportunities for green growth, we mitigated the environmental, social, and governance risks requires for understanding emerging trends, regulations, and societal expectations. Regard to environmental, social, and governance risks, opportunities are generally longer term, incorporated then into the strategic and business planning, helps enhance the planning, decision making, and resilience. So far as the core technological innovation and services deploy the power of data, artificial intelligence, and other key elements of digital age to help companies and government recycle better, help cities manage waste streams more efficiently, and help strengthen the marketing for recycling materials. It meets the Sustainable Development Goal as number 12 on responsible consumption and production. The circular economy means broader concept of sustainability that embraces renewable energy, designed for longevity, upgrading, disassembly, water stewardship, and social responsibility. Thus, the actions required by intelligent waste management are eliminate pollution and contaminating practices, innovate, circulate by increasing the reuse and the recycling. What is expected from technology at intelligent for waste management is the efficiency in data collection. IoTs and use of robotics will promote the transformation to save the planet, but without the dramatic interruptions in our daily lifestyle. It's a big journey. From this perspective, expects that behavior change for climate mitigation and medical waste management will occur by circular economy systemic shift. What is the relevance onto a point the technology as a sixth dimension of human rights? Considering the technology as a sixth dimension allows governments to maximize the application of taxes as far as it will add in the technology as a focal point to receive investments. By the way, investments in technology is one of the goals in 2030 agenda for sustainable development because it will speed up the behavior change for benefit of the planet and the human survival. What makes sense on it? Each year, budget plans of developing in poor countries allocates financial resources to areas considered important to maintain basic needs for citizens. If technology is identified as a human right, it forces to take place in budget plans as a basic need, increase investments in education, research, and technology deployment. This slide is right. We are here. Increasing resilience will recover the world from COVID damage. Resilience will be strengthened through investments in human rights at all sectors. For gain benefits from technology on climate change is required a trustworthy governance guide through 6 covers of key principles to strengthen human security. The algorithms on AI and emerging technologies should follow the assessment mechanism and design and application to ensure that the purposes for the good will be reached. The bias means a difficult thing for measuring or identifying before applications. Thus, this mechanism is suggested as the governance guide of technologies. It will be added by checkup of all dimensions was applied to design, architecture, and applications through the assessment tools that deploys the principles one by one. So I have this table. The first dimension, we have principle of freedom. Second dimension, we have principle of equality. Third dimension, principle of fraternity. Fourth dimension, principle of dignity. Fifth dimension, principle of sovereignty. All 5 dimensions are added by steps to 6 covering. 6th dimension is about the principle of sovereignty of life. By the human-centric value. It means the right of the control of technology because no other value will overcome the life. All 5 dimensions is added to 6 as a system of human life cycle for the sustainable human control of technology by the values privacy, data collection, labor rights, social justice, transparency and sustainability, accountability, ethical professional responsibility, and very important, planet resilience capability is a value at the 6th dimension. Next slide, please. In 2020, the Institute de Recherche pour le Développement in France established a link between global warming and increased risk of antimicrobial resistance. Antimicrobial resistance is responsible for some 700,000 deaths each year worldwide. Then, some recommendations are suggested from my collective friends. 1, for reducing costs of implementation and access to developed countries, international task force can deliver technology models by open source and strategic planning from experts by increasing the stakeholders. Open source allows inclusive non-discriminatory applications. 2, only use antibiotics when prescribed by a certified health professional. And 3, prepare food hygienically. 4, investments on local agriculture for the safe food. 5, improve surveillance of drug-resistant bacteria, and proper regulation to promote the appropriate disposal of medical waste. 6, strengthen juridical institutions by apply efforts to assure that AI algorithms.
The session will end very soon, so please wrap up. It's not. It's beyond my control. It seems we only have a few seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay. So I will finish this. It's sort of pity, but it's okay. Okay. So I will close this presentation by asking forgiveness for the next generations for delivering a world full of rules, but the rules allow them to exist. So because we don't have much time, I am open to questions, but my slides will stay available to everyone that wants to